Yeah.
I want to know because what I was interested in is the fact that you two guys go back such a long time, and how you met up again. Kevin, can you tell me how this reunion came about?
Um, I have a brother-in-law living in the villages here, and he called me and asked, do I remember Liam Monroe that played with Shamrock Rovers? And I said, was his name Mousy? And he said, yeah. Well, I went to school with him, and I made my confirmation with him. And that's basically how we...
And where physically did you meet? Where did this take place?
the actual meeting?
Yeah.
At the Irish Show. What was the name of the Irish Show we were at?
At Celtic.
The Celtic Club. Here in the villages.
And when you saw him for the first time after all this, how much changed? I'm sure a lot did.
Well, first of all, I went over looking for him, and I expected him to be seated, but he was up and about, walking about, so I kept looking for him. I said, he's not here. And then I turned around, he was standing right beside me, and I looked at him, and I knew him right away. He's changed, of course he's changed, but I mean, I knew him right away.
What were the first words?
Well, the first words I said, do you remember me? And he looked at me and said, no way do I remember you. So I kept giving him, lines to, well, I played with you. Well, I played with a lot of guys, he said. And then I mentioned St. Vincent's, and and then I mentioned Clonagale and Dublin Miners and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I basically had to tell him who I was, because he did not recognize me.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Because I had no clue who it was that I was speaking to. But when he told me his name, I knew exactly who he was. He was a big, strong fullback that would knock stuffing out of anybody that came near you. If you were getting battered on the field, you could count on Kevin.
Yeah.
How far back do you know one another?
Well, from the primary schools.
Would be 8, probably 8, until 14. And that would go from 8 would be 41 until 47, 48. And in 1950 would be probably the last time I saw Kevin. Because then I went on to play soccer, and Kevin kept playing Gaelic with Clonagale, and I went and I played with Rovers. And
so are we talking about 60 years?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And 60 years, it doesn't seem an awful long time to people, but heavens, it's a long, long time. So we are lucky to be able to even meet up again, never mind be able to chat like this. So that's basically the way we started. When he told me his name, then I knew exactly where he lived, and his younger brother played ball with Home Farm, and he played Gaelic with Clonagale and never played soccer with any of the schoolboy teams. And Desmond, my younger brother, and Brendan used to play against each other. Desmond would play with Johnville and Brendan would play with Home Farm, and they've had some good times too.
So the parting came that, Kevin, you continued your GAA career, if you like.
All through up to 58. 58, I kept playing till 58. I got married in 57, and then I moved from Glasnevin. Liam actually moved into Glasnevin. He got married in
56.
56.
And we moved into Botanic Avenue, and he moved out.
I moved to Terranure. We bought a house in Terranure, so...
No, that was the posh side.
What was this? What was it like in the early days of the football? The school obviously school football first. You started off with.
That was at St. Vincent's.
Yeah.
And we had in the primary school, that was all right, because we were only kicking about basically until we got to 12.
Yeah.
And then we played under 14, because it was under 14s at the schools that started their football program and hurling program, in the schools. And but I was already playing soccer with Johnville, and we had one or two clashes with the hierarchy in St. Vincent's, so I had. And eventually I left St. Vincent's and went back to St. Peter's in Fisborough. And from there I got picked on a Dublin team, which Kevin was picked also, but he was still at Vincent's. And I was at St. Peter's. And we went to Corrigan Park in Belfast. And we beat Belfast schools up there. And then we had a return game in Croke Park, and which I eventually scored a goal at the railway end in Croke Park. Right? And when Ted Coolin, when we were finished, we went to Barry's Hotel in Denmark Street, in Great Denmark Street, I think it is. Yeah. And we went there, and Ted Coolin said, well, he says, you were lucky today because I was going to just take you off. And then we scored that goal.
I do. Oh, of course, yeah. Ted Coolin was a national teacher and a brilliant man, but a great, very interested in keeping football going, especially the GAA. Yeah. But to get back to St. Vincent's, St. Vincent's, the primary school, we had about 8 or 9 teams in the school. They're all called different names. Like we had a team called Geraldines. Do you remember some of the other names?
Yeah, Sean McDermott's. Geraldines. Then in the hurling we had Owen Rowe, and we had
Fontenoy.
And Young Ireland's. And
this is all in the primary school now, so we played against each other in the school.
In the school. And we had some good sports people there, and we had some bad sports people there. We had some bad ones in the sense that you couldn't play soccer, and that was it.
How difficult was it to play soccer and play Gaelic? I mean, and you got to jump through hoops to do it. I mean, what was the difficulties?
Yeah, you played one in the morning, you played one in the afternoon.
Right.
That's all it was.
Yeah.
You played Saturday in the afternoon, right? And then on Sunday morning you played soccer, and then Sunday afternoon you probably played Gaelic with Clonakale.
Would it have been widely known that you were a soccer player?
Oh yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to hide it.
Oh no, we had various ones that played a double role. I mean, there's Ronnie is the most Ronnie Nolan is the most capped League of Ireland player. Right? He played, Tommy Dunn played, and Jerry Mackey played, and myself. We all played with Clonagale, with Kevin.
But I went the other way. I played rugby. I like to play rugby, so...
and that was as bad. That was frowned on just the same.
Yeah, but we played it on the quiet. We never played organised rugby. We would pick rugby teams and go out to Clontarf and Sutton. We played out in Sutton a lot. We used to call ourselves Suttonians. But they were all Gaelic players, and good ones. Yes. Some of them went on to win All-Ireland medals for Dublin in later years.
Right. What was the attraction for a Gaelic player in rugby? Is it the contact?
Contact. For me, it was contact. It's an open game. You get the ball, and I played forward and I played back and full back. But to get that ball and run and pass was a great feeling, a really wonderful feeling. And it's a great game, even though it's an English game. It's a good game.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't go as far as to say it was an English game, because rugby, all right, possibly came to Ireland through the
England.
English,
Yeah.
right? But only this morning I'm reading an article on the computer, about an English fella, an English player, said he gave up football gave up rugby because of a 23-year-old Irishman. He said, when he started to hit me, he says, I was 34 and he was 23. He said it was time for me to give up.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he said this morning.
Well, you could get hit and hard.
Oh, yes. I mean, there's no shoulder pads in either game, you know? That's the way I look at it.
Yeah. Tell us about that trip up to Belfast to play that match. What was it like?
We
And
went,
Can you remember that journey up
Yeah.
there and all the rest of it?
we went
Yeah.
by train,
Right.
and we got a school bus from the station out to Corrigan Park. Isn't
That's
that
right.
correct?
That's correct.
And then we went to the school. Is that right?
That's right.
I went to the school afterwards, and they gave us something to eat.
Yeah.
And then they put us back on the train. And now that was
But
just the day.
The trip, Corrigan Park and surroundings made a big impression on me because of the police, the RIC, not the RIC,
RUC.
RUC. They were all dressed in black, all armed, and walking around the field at the time. I always remember that they were all dressed in black, and they looked
Sinister.
sinister. They really did. But other than that, we had a wonderful time up there.
Oh yeah,
we had a great
we
time.
had a fabulous time.
Can you remember any of the team members? Can you remember your colleagues?
Oh, my
Names?
gosh.
Yeah,
Come on,
Yeah.
give us a few
there
names.
was. As I said, there were them Ford. There was that lad Canavan.
Canavan.
Cannon was left full back.
Yeah.
And Desi Redmond was on it, and Liam Conway was on it, and Ronnie Nolan, Jerry Mackey, Tommy Dunn, yourself and myself. Well, that's 7. So
Fogarty, Dennis Fogarty.
he was possibly. I know. I don't remember. I don't remember him. But
Most of these players lived in or came from Ringsend, the Ringsend area.
yeah.
Right. How come Ringsend produced such a crop of players?
There wasn't an awful lot more to do. Ringsend was a kind of a depressed area, at least it was in those days.
Absolutely.
And so football was the big thing. And of course, they all started playing Gaelic because of the schools.
Yeah.
But most of them leaned towards soccer eventually.
Yeah, yeah. You were different in one sense, Kevin, in that your father was a Mayo man.
Yeah.
Your mother came from Leitrim, I think, is that?
My father came from Leitrim, my mother was from Mayo.
Oh, sorry, the other way around.
She's from Meelick, Swinford. My father's from Drumahare.
And I mentioned that because that was the influence for you, the Gaelic connection.
Oh,
with
absolutely,
GAA.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I was a GAA man all from day one. I played a lot of soccer, but I was always GAA, and it was because my father was involved with the GAA too, and my mother played no part in it, but she came from Mayo, which was a football county, and a really good one in those days.
You told me one time you made an epic journey one time, didn't you, up to Castlebar?
I cycled with my father. Leitrim and Mayo were playing the Connacht football final. And my father had vacation or holiday time coming up. He had a week off. And he decided, let's cycle from Dublin to Castlebar, which we did. We stayed on the way. We went through Moat. I don't know whether you're familiar with Moat. We stayed there with friends. It took us about a day to get down there, cycling pretty hard, because, we had to move. But so we stayed in Castlebar overnight at the Garda station, the Garda barracks in Castlebar. And then the following day we set it back for Dublin. Leitrim got badly beaten, by the way. Mayo killed them.
What age would you have been?
I was 15, 16.
Was
But I
your-
could cycle.
Oh, yeah.
I was a good cyclist.
Was your father good company on the journey?
My father wasn't a great... my father, as I said, was a policeman, a very strict man. I'd say he was good company, but he wasn't an easy man to grow up with because he had no patience whatsoever. He came from the old school.
Yes. And of course, there would have been a bigger divide then between the adult and the adolescent, which probably is not as big today.
That's correct.
There's
Yeah.
more informality
Oh,
between
yes,
the father and son
absolutely.
today than there was then.
Yeah.
But that was a mighty journey, nonetheless.
Well, that
took
was
you-
that was
yeah.
common in those days, because there was no gas available.
What year was that roughly?
That was
41 or something.
46, I think it was.
Or was it? Just after the war.
Yeah, yeah. But petrol was hard to get at
Yeah.
that time. And you would meet literally hundreds of cyclists, and you always knew where they were going. They were going to the game,
I heard that was the easiest way to get round Dublin, even to any of the football matches.
Yeah.
And you'd get somebody minding a bike outside wherever the event
Yeah.
would be, and they'd be looking for sixpence or something to mind the bike.
Yeah.
So they would. And how you could find your bike, what you did,
Yeah, which you did.
you found your own bike. Out of all the bikes that were there, it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Particularly at Dalymount, down on Connell Street, and a fella used to stand behind McGuinness's in the laneway there, and I'll mind a bike for you. And there'd be hundreds of bikes, but you'd find your own. And that was just the way it was.
Well, I always got a kick out of that because you would give them your bike and you would give them their money, but when you come out after the game, no sign of them. They were gone.
Yeah.
Your bike could be gone too,
Yeah.
but you had to find your own bike. They didn't help you. They were gone.
You had to find your own
Yeah.
bike, correct. Yeah.
Well, let's do with cars. Most if you pay in advance, they don't stay for the full duration. They go before they
Absolutely.
Yeah.
just go.
Yeah.
It's just the way it was.
Yeah, it's it's actually comical in a way because we think in terms, I'll mind your car for you, mister, but to mind your bike was
Yeah.
you know what I
To
mean?
mind your bike, yeah.
It
The
is
tradition
different.
goes back before the car to the
And
bike.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was the same thing in Croke Park. Croke Park, you'd go down the canal, all the way from Crossguns Bridge right down to Jones's Road, and you'd go down the canal, and all down the canal, you'd be no bikes on the canal path at all. But they'd be all going down to Whitworth Road. And you get down and you go down May Street, around May Street and down into Jones's Road, and there'd be bikes everywhere.
Thousands.
That's the way it was, wasn't it?
Yeah. Right.
And the same at Clonliffe Road, off Clonliffe Road, where you went in at the railway end, it was the same thing. There was bikes everywhere.
Were people still selling hats outside Croke Park?
Oh,
in those
yes.
days?
Oh, yeah.
That was a big business. And of course, if it would
But
rain, you'd buy these hats, and if it would rain, the colours would
The dye. The dye.
would start flowing down your face.
The kind of crepe paper, weren't they?
Crepe
Like
That's
paper.
all it was.
They were terrible
That's all it
hats,
was, yeah.
but
That's the way it was. I mean, we lived through not a difficult. Well, it was difficult in a way, but when we go back and think about it, we had a good time.
Well, speaking for myself, I had a marvellous time.
Yes,
It was a wonderful
Yeah.
time to grow up in Ireland. It really was. Even though during the war there was rationing going on, we were very fortunate in many ways because my father was a policeman. So being a policeman, food was available. We never.
Were
I mean, we had
short.
ration cards,
You were
but
never short.
we were never short. We had lots of
and there
sugar,
was
butter, bread, you name it.
Yeah.
We had it. Now, how we got it is another story.
Yeah, I had a friend lived on Norfolk Road, Brian Madden, and Brian Madden's dad.
I knew Brian Madden.
Brian and Noel. And Noel became a Father Noel, Father Noel Madden. And his father was a guard.
That's right.
And they lived in 26 Norfolk Road. And behind it, it must have been the county council or the council or somebody built a huge, big garage. Huge, I'm talking about big garage on the back garden, covered the whole back garden. And that was a turf depot. Now you go and you get a bag of turf there during the war. And Mr. Madden, he also ran a limousine business as well. And he done that when we got married. We had Mr. Madden. He brought the limo round, and that was it.
You remember that, Kevin? yeah?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I cut turf.
Oh, all right.
I did. I cut a lot of turf. We had a bank, which we called banks, up at the Featherbed, and we would go up when turf time would come. We would go up and cut the turf, and we were very fortunate. My father knew a Dr. Mackin, who had a lovely cottage at Glencree. And we used to get to stay at the cottage. And it was a gorgeous cottage. It had no electricity, of course. It had no running water. You had to wash yourself out. There was a lovely stream that flowed by. But we'd cycle up to the top of the mountain every day and cut the turf. Marvellous experience. Just a wonderful experience.
And you'd make tea out on that.
Absolutely. The best tea. We would make tea in the same pot that we would cook a meal.
A billy can.
A billy can. It was there. I love birds. I'm a bit of a bird watcher, and it was there that I first started to watch birds, because the birds up on the top of the mountain there were just unbelievable. While I was up there, I basically was always walking around the top of the mountain, and you would come to these big pits where there were finished cutting turf there. But I found, while I was there, I was always looking for stuff. I found 2 rifles buried in the turf. How long they were there, who knows? So I called my father, and he says, well, they're two IRA rifles that have been, God knows how long they've been up there, but he took them out, took them home.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Of course, it was a great place to secrete things, the bogs, wasn't it?
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
it was.
Yeah.
Even in ancient times.
Yeah, and in modern times too.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, but
And there could be a few more
the
up
general,
there still.
remember the general? He,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. You were smiling there when he was talking
There
about
could,
the
there could be a
turf.
few more left up there.
Yeah.
Never mind nothing else.
You didn't have any turf cutting experience yourself, Lee?
Oh, God, no.
No.
Oh, my father was born in Little Denmark Street, which is now has Rocha stores on it. And they lived there, his sister, himself, and his brother, because all my grandparents were all dead. I never knew any of them. And but he was the one that started me playing, because he played, and he played. He was born in 89, and he played with a team called Frankfurt, and Frankfurt had a team of players, and there was a bookmaker, a man called Harry Leddy. He lived on Connaught Street, and there was Oscar Traynor, who became the Minister of Defence, and there was General Grant, was another one, and they called him, I believe they called him General, because he was the one that used to shout the loudest, so that was how he got his word across. And but I have a paper in Toronto, so I have, and it's 1910, and that team is listed in the paper. So we go back in soccer a long time. But when I was growing up, we went to Dalymount on a Saturday afternoon. Bows A, B or C played. We went to Croke Park at 11 o'clock or 11:30 on a Sunday morning, because it was always a hurling match or a Gaelic match on. There was always a football match or a hurling match on. And my father worked with a man called Owens, and he ran Owen Row, so he did. Mm-hmm. And he started us. That was what we done. Then Sunday afternoon, you went back to Dalymount, and that was your weekend completely covered. And then during the summer, when it would be only the Gaelic matches would be on, you went out maybe, we've often got a tram out to Marion Gates and walked all the way back to Fisborough. And we were only 6 and 7 at the time, Desmond and myself, and we'd go all along the Sandymount seafront and through Rings End and across the locks, across the Grand Canal and over the locks and all the way up the South Quay, and then get into O'Connell Street. Will we get the bus or the tram it was then? Will we get it? No, we'll walk. And that was our weekend for a long time.
Right. I would imagine that the games were well attended then, because like there was no television, so I mean the attendance must have been very good in those days at both soccer and Gaelic matches.
Well, the long stand on a Sunday morning would be mostly full, and the long stand isn't no longer, of course, but the Hogan stand and the long stand were both full on a Sunday morning, without any, you had no problem.
Club games were very big.
Yeah,
I mean,
they were.
They were
I mean,
huge.
you'd got all the good ones, all the good county players. That's the best way of saying it. Played in all the teams, didn't they?
Well, yes,
They had a number in each team, so they did. Yeah.
Kerrymen coming to Dublin played for Geraldines. That was the Kerry team.
Black and white.
Black and white.
And that's like the Australians now.
That's right.
With the stripe across diagonally on their body, isn't that correct?
That's right.
And black and a white band right diagonally across.
All of these people come up from the country, and they got to play for these club teams like Young Ireland's, Fogs, and UCD, but they're all given jobs. This was the thing. You play for the team, you've got a job. And they either went to work for Boland's, the bread people, some went to Guinness's, some went to... well, they all had jobs, let's put it that way, and good jobs in those days.
Almost like the American equivalent of education, and you were
Like
bought in
university,
Exactly.
like the university.
Yeah.
Yeah, except instead of being educated, you were given a job to sustain yourself. Yeah, so that's how big it was. That's an indication, isn't it, of how strong this whole thing was and how important it was, how big it was.
Well, the GAA was big, and it was a good time for the GAA because it was more innocent. Now the GAA has totally changed. It's professional, very professional, but it was a great time to be part of the GAA. It really was. For me, it was great because I got to sell programs when I was about 7 or 8 years of age. They would give you, I think you would start you off with 200 programs. You would charge, I think it was 3 pennies for a program, maybe even less. You got to keep a farthing. However, if you sell 300 or 400 programs, a lot of money in those days. We're talking now about, the late 30s and early 40s. For me, I got into the games free. I got to know all the top players. I met them all, every one of them. Mick Mackey, Christy Ring in his heyday. I could just name off many of them. The Delaney's of Stradbally County Leaks, all 5 of them played for Leaks on the same day. I played, believe it or not, against Jack Lynch, who turned out to be a prime minister in later years. Yeah. How I did that was, he was playing for civil service at the time, and this was Clonagale senior team were playing civil service, and I was on the sideline. I was the sideline man. Clonagale ended up with 2 players short. Joe Stafford of Cavan was the captain of the team at the time, and he called me and says, you're going to play. You're going to play. So I had to leave the sideline, went in for the last 10 minutes. Jack Lynch was playing. I played against Jack Lynch. Jack Lynch was on his way out by this time now. This was 47 or 48,
It's fantastic.
It was.
Yes. When you go back over the years and you think about like that, like you just said, who you played against and everything else. And I signed for Rovers in 1951, and I went on holidays to Blackpool. I was only going to Blackpool, and I was going on holidays. And another guard, Sean Moynihan, he lived in Orchard Terrace off the North Circular Road. And Sean and myself were going to Blackpool for 2 weeks. And Joe Cunningham got on to the manager at Blackpool and said, asked him, could I go and train? And I went to training every day, and I was trained with Mortison, Matthews, Taylor, Farm, the whole all the Blackpool players, and it was fantastic. And it cost me 2 and 6pence for the taxi from where we were staying to Bloomfield Road, and 2 and 6pence back. So I was refunded that. I got that back.
Would that have been the beginning of your
was-
interest in the when you got a taste of the big club?
Yeah, I did.
Was that
yes.
the beginning of your ambitions, if you
Well,
like?
I'd never any ambitions. I was lucky enough. To be at a time that I was with a team that was a good team, and I was lucky enough. And then I got a knock on the left knee, and things didn't go too well. And then I went up to Northern Ireland, to Ards, and played with Ards. And I only got, last 2 weeks ago, I got an email from a fella in Newton Ards, and he told me that another of my records had been broken. And he says, it's taken from 1955 until now for it to be broken. And that was, I scored 3 goals on the first game that I played with Ards, and we didn't do too badly.
Yeah, that certainly has. You two have shared an awful lot going back a number of years, and that's one thing that you have in common, that you've shared so much, and how does, and now you've met somebody who can relate to you, and you too, Kevin, that
We
you
can
can
go
relate
back.
to those
We can go
issues.
back and talk about people that nobody
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. Isn't that right?
Exactly
they,
right.
They don't know nobody. We know so far back, and I'm sure there are others at home in Ireland, right, will know exactly the same thing that we have just said. But to meet somebody after all these years, it's a little bit mind-boggling, because we're out here in a completely, what are they?
Different environment.
250 million?
300
Right.
million.
And you bump into somebody that you haven't seen for so long, and you can talk about the same things that they can talk about. So,
Particularly in this environment, this
Yeah.
tropical environment, which is so far removed from your history.
there you go.
That's true.
And that makes it
Yeah.
special in a way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, it does. But you were talking about Dr. Mackin.
Dr. Mackin.
And those Dr. Moynihan was on one side of the the laneway into Dalymount from the Cabra Road, right? There was Dr. Mackin was on this side of the lane, and Dr. Moynihan was on the other side of the lane. And Dr. Moynihan was the CIE. Well, it was the GSR, then it was CIE. He was their doctor, and that's where we all went to. And most of the Garda people went to to Mackin.
That's true. That is so true.
Now, that was just 2 names that came up,
Yeah.
and you can remember them as well as anything,
What was the social life? Just taking in the period between the ages of 8 and 14, you were too young to be going to dances and so on. So it was strictly sport that you were
That's all.
involved with.
That's all there was.
There had to be development of some kind
We-
or another, had there, Lynn?
I went to in Vincent's, right? They had our sports day, and our sports day was track and field,
Yeah. High jump too.
everything,
Yeah.
like that. And there was one particular thing on a table, there, and that was a ball. I'd never seen a ball. It was neither Gaelic ball or it was just a ball, a leather ball, and I was, oh God, if I could get that, it would be great. And I got into the final of the 100
yards.
100 yards, and I was so far in front that I looked round, and Tony Roach, a fella called Tony Roach, come up on the other side of me. I got a butter dish.
You didn't get
He got the ball. I got a butter dish. And that is still alive today, that butter dish. It's in Toronto, so it is.
So we're talking about St. Vincent's, and you both knew one another from the age of 8, which would have been roughly, what's the ages here now? We have your own age now at the moment.
I'm 76.
Right, and Cal?
77.
There you go. So you would have been in a class above.
No, actually, I think we were most of the time in.
No, we're in the same class.
In the same class.
We're the same class, but that was it depended when you were born.
Yeah. Right. Yes, you
And
could fall into it.
You fell into a different category.
Well, okay, let's figure it out now. At the age of 8, what year are we talking about, both of you then? So that would have been.
Well, I'm 41.
Right.
I'd be 41.
Right. 1941.
Yeah.
Right. So what was
1941?
Right.
We had Mr. in the primary in Vincent's. We had Mr. McKittrick. We had Mr. Moylan. We had
Mr. O'Shea.
Mr. O'Shea, and we had another one, and they called him Slim, Mr. Murray.
Mr. Murray. Tall.
A
Slim.
huge, tall man.
Wonderful dresser.
Always immaculate.
Immaculate. Yeah.
And then we had Brother Royal, Brother Kiley,
McGrath.
Brother McGrath,
Brother Barber. Brother
no,
Egan.
Brother Egan.
Brother
Egan,
Egan.
yeah. And
Brother Cal.
well, Brother Cal came at a later stage. He didn't come when we started. He came at a later stage. Oh, that was another big man, another huge
great
big
footballer.
man. Yeah, and then so we had them all through the years until such time as we went to the secondary.
Right, but you started there at the age of 8. Is that what you're saying? So where would you have been before that?
I was at St. Peter's.
Right, and Kevin,
National-
you were
I was
there.
at St. Columba's, Iona Road. Iona Road.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So can you remember, just a matter of interest, I know it's going back a bit. Liam, for instance, what's your very first memory of Kevin, like in Can you remember, when you first
We
got
meeting on a football game, and if he done something wrong, what the bloody hell did you do that for? And he'd say the same about me, I'm sure. And why didn't you do this or why didn't you do that? And it just went on from there. But football, any kind of football, brings people together. Any sporting event brings people together, and people that would never meet otherwise. And it depends. Friendships go on from there, all over the years for the likes of at this particular moment. You can say that he was a good friend of mine when we were playing ball. And now we've met up again, and our friendship now has continued. So that's the only way I can put it.
Right. The school, in the classroom, were they hard teachers? Were they, what's your memory of them?
I have to be very careful here.
Well, I believe some were, especially the Christian brothers, they were very harsh. They had very little patience, and the punishment at times was phenomenal. Severe.
Real.
I always found that they were vindictive, and as I say, had no patience whatsoever. especially Brother Oil, who was probably the top Christian brother at the school, and
Well, he was at the primary.
yeah,
Yeah.
and he would have a class of the really good scholars, the scholarship kids,
The intelligent
the
ones.
intelligent people, and very austere, very, very austere. If you saw Brother Royal walking towards you, you'd walk away. You'd walk around.
You'd be afraid that he'd be heading for you. That was the whole thing.
He was not approachable.
Absolutely not.
Well, none of them really were
Well,
approachable.
some of them were. I got on very well with Brother Cal.
Oh, but he was a different story.
Yeah.
Because he was really interested in the sporting
In the
end
sports.
of it as well. Whereas Brother Royal, you never saw him out on
No,
the
you never
on the pitch at all.
Yeah,
You
Brother
know?
McGrath was another one I thought was a fine brother.
Yeah, but there was another one there, Bulger, Brother Bulger.
Brother
Now,
Bulger.
Brother Bulger was a hurler. He was an out and out hurler. Was his. And now he was good, but if you didn't play hurling, wasn't so good. Wasn't so good. But we had a good we had a hard time, but we had a good time.
Exactly.
And we made our own
Entertainment.
amusement and entertainment. And I mean, I can go back now to when we moved houses and we moved to a different area in Dublin, and we didn't have a ball, a tennis ball or any kind of a ball, and we made ball. We made balls out of brown paper, newspapers, or anything to kick around the place.
Old nylon stockings.
Isn't that right?
We would stuff them with cloth and paper and have her mother stitch them together. They made the best footballs, and they didn't break windows. When they hit a window, they didn't break the window.
Yes, yeah.
Well, we didn't have that problem, thank God. But I mean, that was the way it was. In that era, we made our own amusement. Now, I don't know, but you might not know, but on Connaught Street in Fisborough, there was Eccles Street School, which was a girls' school, convent school, and they had a field at the bridge, the Connaught Street Bridge, which is now Liam Whelan Bridge. And Sunday, there was nobody ever there. And on Sunday morning, there would be a match between the tramway cottages, which were right beside it, all them, and the people from, we say, over the bridge in Cabra, Leo Fulham, Bunny Fulham, Danny Conroy, Donny Conroy, Joe Darcy, Liam McDonald, and they were all fellas that most of them eventually made it good in the football. And we would play there in Bermose Field. That's what we used to call it, Bermose Field. And you would have to get in there and have the game and get out real quick. And all we played then was camogie posts. They were all camogie, laid out for camogie, and that was the goal. So, you know, we made our own entertainment, so we did. And I'm sure Kevin done the same thing. There's no doubt in it. Yeah.
I'd remarked earlier on, Kevin, that your accent, I detected the country thing, and it shows you that your mother, you know, and your father, Leitrim and Mayo, that was very strong, and you actually picked up a little bit of that.
Well, I did, because most of the guards were living in Glasnevin, where I lived, right beside each other. We had in our street alone, we had 8 policemen living in the same street, and they're all from the west of Ireland. And
You wouldn't want to break a street light on your road.
No, you wouldn't. That's true. And you didn't. You didn't.
Yeah.
Yes, the fact is that our house was always filled with West of Ireland people. Always. I mean, coming up from the West of Ireland, from Claremorris, Swinford and Castlebar and all these, they were always, when they came to town to shop, to Cleary's and Guineys, they would be out to Glasnevin to stay overnight. So I grew up in that kind of environment. And then I played with Gaelic football. Gaelic football was played mostly by men from the country.
But it's just funny that because normally, if you had what would normally happen is that people would come up to the country, live in Dublin, and the children then would assimilate in, and they would want to, they would acquire the accent and so on. But because of the reasons you gave, that didn't happen because there was almost a strong rural type community on your street.
Very much so. Very much so.
With your callers.
Yeah.
And of course, the one thing about having parents from the country is you got to go on your holidays. And you got
every
to go
year,
to these places.
6 and 7 weeks at a time, you'd be down in the country. I went to school in Claremorris, County Mayo, during the war. When the Germans started bombing North Strand, which is close to Glasnevin, 1941. My mother decided to ship me off to her sister, one of the sisters in Claremorris. So I went to school for a period in Claremorris.
Well,
a great time, a wonderful time, by the way.
You're talking about that, the bombing.
Yeah.
There was one bomb was on North Strand, and a lot of people killed in that. And the people that were left homeless, they were all accommodated in Canberra West.
That's right.
And we visited, my father, my brother, and myself. We visited a dog pond where one bomb fell. We visited North Strand where one bomb fell.
Sorry, yes, yeah.
And we visited Rialto where the other one fell, all on the same morning. And you either walked or you got
cycled.
Well, Daddy never cycled. My father never cycled. My father walked everywhere.
Would you have heard the actual bombs? Did you?
Yes.
You remember
Yes.
the
Yeah.
actual
Yes.
falls?
Yeah.
I saw
the craters.
the planes go over that night.
Really?
Because the searchlights would come on, and even though we're neutral, I mean they're making their way up the east coast of Ireland, heading for Northern Ireland and cross over. But our searchlight would go on, so you'd actually see them, and the sound was amazing. It was woo 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 woo. So my mother would immediately have us all down on our knees saying the rosary. I mean,
Funny,
my mother
isn't
had
it?
faith.
Yeah. Well, I can remember when we were in Shannon Drive, we were sitting at a table one night, and we had a Spitfire chasing a Messerschmitt right over the pin mill. Well, that was Shandon Mills, and it went right over the top of the building, and it was something to see. And the wings on these things were going. Oh, it was something else.
Likewise, it was a Sunday morning, and I'm coming out of the wooden church in Glasnevin, Our Lady of Dolors, $7. There again, there was a German plane in flames, smoke billowing out the back, and a British plane chasing it. The plane eventually came down in Clontarf. It actually went into the water there in Clontarf.
So
Amazing.
yeah,
Amazing, yeah.
But my father was stationed at Rathmines in the Garda station at that time, and of course when the bomb went off at North Strand, they had to get onto their bikes and head out to North Strand. So he saw a lot of that. But I saw that same day. That's the following morning. The following morning, we all got on our bikes, took off
and
down.
and visited all the
Saw it
places.
all.
That's the
Saw
way
it
it
all.
was. That's
Yeah.
the way it was. Yep.
To see the devastation.
Yeah.
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 North Strand was the worst.
Yeah.
The worst hit. of
Quite a
the lot.
few deaths. In
There was
that.
only
There were quite a few.
well, actually,
Yeah.
the total number of people killed was 29.
Right.
Now it sounded there would be a lot more,
Because
29
it's-
deaths
yeah,
was
that's right,
the,
yeah,
was, the,
'cause,
was the total.
North Strand was a tenement area that
Yeah.
was hit, so they were highly populated.
It was
Right.
it was a flat. The flats were there in North Strand, and that were the first flats that I ever remember. Really,
As a matter of interest, there's been lots of controversy about the reasons why they bombed. That some said that they were just discharging the weight cargo and maybe didn't know. But have you any thoughts on
I
that?
do, actually. I do. First of all, Ireland was supposed to be neutral. Bottom line is that we weren't neutral. When Belfast was bombed, De Valera sent all the engines right up there. They reported on maneuverings out in the ocean, they reported to Britain. We did a lot of stuff that a neutral country doesn't do. When any German pilot would land in Ireland, he was taken into custody, sent up to Northern Ireland. Now, that's the theory, that Hitler decided to show us that, you're supposed to be a neutral country. That's one of them. My other theory is that German pilots just decided, they didn't want to risk being shot down and would drop their bombs.
Get rid of them.
Except for the one that went around North Strand, because the plane that bombed North Strand, he circled. He was visibly seen circling over North Strand. So he had something else on his mind.
He had time. It was quite a deliberate decision to discharge at that point.
Well, he was seen circling. So,
Right. Obviously trying to find a target or didn't know where he was. There could be lots of reasons.
All kinds of theories about
Yes,
that.
yeah,
My one thing is, I think it's because we decided to send up all these fire trucks and put out the fires, which was a wonderful thing, actually.
I think so too.
When you think of it.
I think so too, and it was. But it's funny that was the closest we got to war in Ireland, was the bombs that were.
Yeah.
the actual
That's
physical,
correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
We were
Yeah.
lucky in that respect.
We were lucky because I do believe that if either wanted to bomb the place, they could have bombed the place.
Well, yes,
You
but
know-
Churchill had made a lot of noise that he was going to come over and take the ports anyway, whether we liked it or not.
That's right. When you think about it, that they only signed them over 3 years earlier, something before the war or something. I think it was only 3 or 4 years before they came back to us.
Yeah.
They were still in their possession up to that point, 1933 or something.
We became a republic in
48,
48,
1948.
Yeah.
but we were a free state up to 48.
So that was our taste of war during that time. And then, if that was, can you remember what year was that? The bombing, roughly.
41.
41.
19,
That was at
May,
41.
May,
Yeah.
May the 21st.
And that age, that would put you at what age roughly?
41, I'd have been 8.
You'd have been
Yeah.
only 8 then. So yeah. So that was that. But a frightening time, a touch of danger, just the same. You were sent off up down the country, and
In actual fact, for me, it wasn't a frightening thing at all, because we just didn't worry about those things a lot. No, our parents did. My mother did, and I'm sure your mother
We
did.
didn't. We
but
didn't.
we didn't.
No.
yeah,
This was at night time. It'd be a total blackout. The ARP and the they would be parading around the town, and at night time sometimes I would go out. The Irish government decided to build concrete shelters going over
Down
any
the mid-
bridge,
and
over any bridge.
and
So that if the Germans came, they wouldn't be able to drive their tanks over the bridges. So they would build these huge concrete blocks with steel girders sticking out.
air raid shelters.
And at night time, I used to go out and sit with the army guy. He would have these beautiful big cinder fires, and you'd sit in his tent, and he'd be armed there with a shotgun or a rifle. But I would spend the night with him. My mother gave me permission to go out and sit with him.
There were shelters on the north side of the road. There were shelters all down. There was 2 on O'Connell Street. Was one on Drumcondra Road.
Yeah.
Were they shelters or were they just barriers to
No,
stop?
there were shelters.
There were actually shelters.
That you could, if there were fires or anything else, you could go into them.
But they were never used because there was no
They were-
Very little use.
Yeah.
Most of them were barriers.
That's-
Big, massive barriers, concrete barriers, with, as I say, with steel girders sticking out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you, because of Liam, you went the soccer route, and that's where you chose to go because of I suspect the Blackpool experience.
Oh no!
Or
It
did
was
a little-
just soccer was in the family. That was it. My father got a cap against Scotland in 1926. And I got one, luckily enough, in 54. And my brother got two before me. He got it in the youth. He went to Belgium to play in the youth tournament in Belgium. So all our male family all have played for the country. So we've done good.
Right. Can you tell me the last time, Kevin, when the last two you would have played together? When would that be for you?
That would
What would have been the final?
I'm going to say it would be 1950.
That probably would be correct.
Can you remember the occasion, the match? Can
No.
you remember the?
Well, it was with
It would have to
Clanagale.
be with Clanagale.
Clanagale, GAA.
Yeah, it would have to be. Yeah, and Ted Coolin was still running the team at that time, and unfortunately, he has died.
Oh, of course. Yeah, he'd be.
But it wasn't just that. I mean, when he died, he had such a gathering of people. It was something else. I mean, from everybody that was interested in Gaelic football. Really, he was one of the leaders of the pack. Am I right? No.
Huge. He was very big.
And he was a school teacher.
And a wonderful man. I mean, a pleasure to have known him. He was just a wonder. But I'd like to tell a story about Liam. Tony O'Reilly, who turned out pretty good. Tony O'Reilly and Liam were on a trial game for the Irish schoolboy team. And Liam beat Tony O'Reilly for the place in the team. And Tony O'Reilly, in his autobiography, mentions the fact that he'll never forgive Mousy Munro for beating him for that place. This is in his autobiography, by the way.
Well,
I knew Tony O'Reilly, so he was...
It's funny that, because I have a watch
yeah.
over there, and I got it because I never played in that game. The game that I was picked for, I was picked as captain of the team. And on the Wednesday before the game, I went out with Johnville, the team, and they were playing under 15s, and they were short. And I was asked would I play, and I said I can't play because of this match is on Saturday. And Jim Kennedy, God be good to him, he said, don't worry about it, I'll fix it up. And the next day I was told I couldn't play for the international team. So Noel Kelly, who eventually took over McConnell's, the fireplace people, he was picked instead. So he played instead. Yeah. So Johnville gave me that watch, and that was the end of that.
Well, as I said, I first started playing Gaelic with St. Vincent's Glasnevin, and went through secondary, and then started playing. I left school. I forget the exact year I left school, but basically I played football then with a team called St. Michael's of Inchicore, which was started up by... the manager's name eludes me right now, but he was another countryman. this was a team comprised of countrymen and Dublin men. So I played with them until I got married, which was in 1957. Stopped playing Gaelic football in 57, basically. We bought a house, had a house built out in Turnour. The last club was St. Michael's of Inchicore. We reached the Dublin senior football final, beaten by Ern's Isle, whose team was captained by Senator Jim Tunney. I don't know whether you remember him. Also on the same team were good old St. Vincent boys like Desi Osborne, Brendan Houlihan, Dermot McCann. You remember these guys?
Yeah, Jim Houlihan. Jim Houlihan.
Brendan Houlihan.
Well, there was another Jim Houlihan.
Oh, the one I'm talking about is Brendan
yeah,
Houlihan, anyway.
Yeah.
So that was, as I say, in 57 I got married, moved to Turnour. Basically quit football, playing it at this point. However, I started to coach a local team, just a local team, soccer. I started coaching soccer at this point. This is all out in Turnour now. Oh. And so that was the end of my playing days. We had these friends who were from Inchicore, Martin and Joan Quigley, who had emigrated to the United States in 1958, came out to Portland, Oregon, and we're always talking about, why don't you come out and see them? And May and I said, no, we're happy here. We just brand new house. We're very happy here. I had my own business. I was in the produce business. I was a produce wholesaler. I would buy, I'd show up at the markets, Dublin city markets, fruit markets, at 4 o'clock in the morning. I had a truck, would load up the truck, head down into Kildare, Meath, Offaly, you name it, Wexford, empty the truck, have my day finished, come back, then start off again in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, load up. So anyway, that's what I did. 61 came, and May, my wife, decided, well, why don't we just go out and see what the United States is all about? Which we did, and we stayed in Portland. We went out and we decided to stay for 6 months.
Had you got children at that stage?
No children.
Right.
That's the reason why we can do all these things.
Yes,
yeah,
made it possible.
And in those days, you could come and stay in the United States fairly easy, as long as you had enough money to support yourself. And you had to post a certain amount of money in the banks, and that's what we did. One thing led to another. We'd go home. We'd go home every year. But as I say, we decided, well, let's stay another year and another year. Then my wife became pregnant, and then that kind of put the roots in. Kept her house in Turnour, kept it for 15 years, rented it out, which was a good thing. We did well with that house. And that basically is the story of...
what did you do? How did you support yourself? What work did you do when you were here?
I was in the produce business.
You continued on?
I continued on because the reason why I did that was that I used to sell products from the United States. I used to sell Hood River pears, Washington State apples. So I went into the largest produce company in the United States, a company called Pacific Fruit and Produce. And I told them, my name is Kevin Travers. I used to sell your products in Dublin, Ireland. That immediately got me a job. I got a job. Very first day I went in there, and I started selling produce for this large company. I stayed with them for about 2 years, then decided to work for a company called Piggly Wiggly's grocery stores. They were the first original supermarket in the United States. There's only a few of them left, and they're all on the East Coast, some in Florida, but most of them up in Virginia. And I went to work for Piggly Wiggly. Great company. Left them, worked for them for 3 or 4 years, then decided to buy my own store, which I did. I bought 2 grocery stores in Portland, kept them for about 3 or 4 years, got rid of them. Then I went to work I'm still in the food business now. I started selling specialty foods from Dublin, from Ireland, England, Scotland, and Wales. I used to sell Barry's teas, you name it, all Irish products, teas from England, PG Tips, Yorkshire Gold teas. That's what I did for years. And I just retired about 6 months ago. We have 3 kids, Fergus, Kathleen, and Niall, and we have 6 grandkids.
Right, very good.
And where are they all, Kevin?
They're all right beside me out in Lake Oswego in Oregon,
Are they?
all around me.
All
So you still have relations at home, and you still get to visit Ireland.
We go
Who's
home.
left? Yeah.
I have 2 sisters.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Maureen, who lives in Naas, Kildare. She's 83, still plays golf. A great golfer, as a matter of fact, for her age. My sister Betty lives in Glasnevin, in the house I was born in. Still lives in. Yeah, she lives in Botanic Avenue. She still lives there.
Oh, my God.
She's 82. My brother Brendan lives in San Rafael, which is in California.
We left the school games behind us, and then we want to progress from there. So bring us on a bit further then.
Well, I went to Cabra West Technical School, and we still played there because the first year that it was opened, we reached the final of both the soccer and the Gaelic in the technical schools, and we won both the soccer and so I went there, and when I was 16 I went from there to do an apprenticeship in CIE. It was, my father worked there all his life and I worked there then, and from there we progressed, and I played ball with Rovers, and everything was very, very good, I have to say, until I got a knock on this one, on my left knee. And then I was laid up for a while, and I never got back into the team at Milltown. Maxie McCann came in to play, and so I didn't play for probably 6 months. And then a chap came down from Northern Ireland and he asked me would I go play in Newton Ards. It was Ards football. And I went up and played with them. And his son played with them. And if you go back over all the years and the amount of money that people are making now playing football, it was actually George Eastham Sr. broke the contract rule for payment of professional footballers in England. And he would not let his young son, young George, went from Newton Ards to Newcastle, and he was going to be transferred from Newcastle to Arsenal, and it was £20 a week, £4 for a win and £2 for a draw. And old George, as I used to call him, wouldn't let young George go for that, and he broke the money barrier. But I went to play with Ards, and old George Eastham was the manager, and we had a very good time, very good season, and that was 55-56. And we had a very good time, and the second year of 56-57, I was transferred from there to Bristol, and for £1,500 or something it was, of which on the backhand Sarah and I done very, very well. We got married in 56, and we had Geraldine was born at that time, and we went to Bristol. And the first meeting up with the party from Bristol was in Liverpool. And we stopped at the Adelphi Hotel. Posh hotel. Posh. Oh, real. And we met there, and Bristol City were playing Liverpool, and Bill Shankly was manager of Liverpool, and they were in the second division then. And we played, and I went down to Bristol, and after a couple of weeks, I went home and I picked Sarah up, and we went back to Bristol. And Pat Beasley was the manager there then, and he got the sack. So I finished my apprenticeship, so I was all right. So Pat Beasley got the sack, and Peter Doherty came. And the gentleman never particularly liked a couple of the Irish men that were there, so he didn't. And anyway, he decided to let us go. There were only two, Dermot Curtis and myself, and he decided to let us go. And I went to Scunthorpe, and Alf Ramsey, who was the manager of England afterwards, he came and picked up Dermot Curtis, and Dermot Curtis won an English League medal with Ipswich, and Mr. Doherty wasn't awfully pleased, but that's what happened.
How was it like for an Irishman, like an Irish sportsman?
Hard.
Was it? What were the difficulties?
Well, quite a few of them wouldn't even talk to you. So you just had to get on with what you were doing and ignore the fact, because a lot of them thought that there should have been only English players playing, and that was it. And that was the way it was all the way through. And so we went home then from Scunthorpe. That was a place we didn't like. We went home from Scunthorpe, and I went back to play in Northern Ireland with a team called Distillery, and then I came back from Distillery. I went back down to play with Dundalk, and in Dundalk, I've held a record in Dundalk from 1959-60 until 2002. And that was 19 goals in 22 matches. And after that, we were living in Shanless Road in Santry. And we decided, we went off to England, back to England in 1963, and we went to Huddersfield because Sarah's sister was in Huddersfield. And I got a job there with an engineering company, and from there we stayed there for 15 years, and I stayed with the same company. And then I went back to Ireland and went with an environmental company in Ireland that were doing the same thing as we were in England. And then that was in 78. And then in 90, we left Ireland for Canada because of difficult circumstances with our daughter. Our daughter had gone to Canada, and she was involved in a car crash, and she was left a paraplegic. And so Sarah, my wife and I, Sarah, and I went out to Toronto, and then flew from there up to a place called Thunder Bay. And Deirdre was left as a paraplegic. She was from the waist down, she was paralysed. And we stayed in Toronto, and a person came and he asked me what I worked at. And I told him, and he said, that's fine. And 2 days later, he rang me and he told me I had an appointment for an interview with a company, and so I went. I'll pick you up, he said. He took me down, had the appointment, went through with a gentleman, a very, very simple interview. And that afternoon, we had a contract that we could stay in Canada for 2 years, and I had a job for 2 years. And then that same company moved their headquarters down to South Carolina. And they were starting to close things up, basically, in Canada. And I was in Canada just before that, and the closing down of most of the places in Canada. And a gentleman rang me from South Carolina and asked me would I come down to do a job for him, which I duly did. And we'd been then for 8.5 years, we were in South Carolina. And that's how we became, down in the States, how we became, well, now it's like a second home. So we live here now 6 months, and we live in Toronto 6 months.
While Kevin was up with his father cutting turf up in the mountains, the Featherbed Mountains, you were heading out to Drogheda. Didn't you have that connection with Drogheda?
Yeah, we have. My auntie, my mother's sister, and her hubby went down to take over a bakery in West Street in Drogheda. And we used to be sent down to Drogheda for our holidays. And my auntie always took a house in Clogherhead. And we were always involved in that house in Clogherhead. And we had a circus there one night. And my cousins, three cousins, were in front of us. And I don't know what happened, but we ate something that didn't agree with us, and we got sick all over. Carmel was in front of us, and we got sick all over. Two of us got sick all over us, so we did. But Clogherhead, Desmond, my brother, he had a place in Clogherhead, and he's just given it up, so he has. But Drogheda, I knew a lot of people in Drogheda, and we had a good time, always had a good time. We went there to play in the Minor Cup, and Mick Megan, who played with Everton and Rovers and managed the international team. And Megan that day walked on water. The ground was so sloppy, but he was so good that I can always remember that day. But Drogheda has fond memories, yes, for us, for me anyway. Now, we got married in 56, and from 57 we went to England. 60 we came home to Ireland. 63 we went back to England. 78 we went back to Ireland. 90 we went to Canada. 93 we came to the United States. 2001 we went back to Canada. So now we have all these moves. So everything has turned out so good that out of a bad thing, a lot of good things have come. It's the way I look at it.
Yeah, very good.
So
both you, Glasnevin and Phibsborough, we've come a long way, guys, haven't we?
Yes, we have. We've come
long,
but it's been a great journey. Great journey.
It's taken a few years.
Yeah.
But it's been very, very. We've done very well. We have been one of the very lucky ones, because there's an awful lot of people that have never had the experience that we've had.
Well, I'd like to thank both of you for coming along and sharing your memories with us here. I just think it's amazing, again, that after so long that you should meet up in this foreign land, Florida, in one of the recreation centres, Phibsborough and Glasnevin meet again.
Yeah.
A long time ago, we met, and it's been a long time for us to meet again. There was a good distance in between.
Oh,
Wasn't it?
it's been a great trip. Great trip.
Yeah, that's true.